All right. Hi, everybody. Melissa Stek here with the Office of Social Justice. I'm here with some of our Refugee Resettlement Agency partners, and we want to talk about what's happening on refugee resettlement numbers for next year and the proposed numbers that came from the administration last week. So I'll allow my guests here to introduce themselves. Can I start with Stacey?
Yeah, hi, I'm Stacey Clack. I work for Church World Service as a faith community organizer.
And Kristine?
Kristine VanNoord, and I am the Program Director for Bethany Christian Services Refugee Adult and Family Programs based here in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And I'm Peter Zigterman. I'm the Director of Immigrant Family Services at World Relief Chicago.
Great, and thank you so much to each of you for being willing to speak on this call, because we think that people have a lot of questions about what's happening right now and what's going to be happening. So just to set the stage for everybody, last week, Thursday, which was the end of the month, end of September, the president made an announcement that he is proposing 18,000 refugees for resettlement for fiscal year 2020, which is the lowest that it's ever been in the history of this program in the United States. And unfortunately, what happened was this decision, the final decision was due by the end of September. But because that was not made in time, and it wasn't made just yet in consultation with congressional leaders, the program is sort of in a pause right now. There are refugees not being resettled right now until the president can meet with certain congressional leaders to talk about his proposed number and make a final decision. So that will likely not happen until October. So that opens us up to where we're at now, and we wanted to offer up some questions for our partners here to answer and talk about the impacts of these decisions. So, so our first question to Stacey, just in talking about until the president meets with congressional leaders to make a final decision, the refugee resettlement program is in what's called a moratorium, which is a pause, as I already mentioned. So Stacey, could you tell us what exactly that means?
Yeah, right now the pause is currently in place until October 22 with hopes that travel will begin again after that. This has a huge impact on refugees who are in process. A lot of them had travel booked during October 1 to October 22, and that travel has been canceled. And because that travel has been canceled, they have had it sort of has put their families back home in a position where they're waiting for people to travel to come to the United States to join them, and they're no longer being able to do that. But those who are still in the camps have sold all of their belongings and gotten ready to travel, and now are sort of in a holding pattern. Not to mention, in order to travel, they have certain travel clearances that they have to meet, and a lot of those clearances for some of our refugees who are waiting to be resettled here will expire during that time period of October 1 to October 22, which will further delay their travel, because some of those travel clearances could take up to a few months or possibly a year to get them back up to date. I know for a fact that it's affected our Bethany office here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And so maybe Kristine, if you would like to explain a little bit about how that's directly impacted your office, that would be great.
So it's been heartbreaking. We have had to speak with a lot of families about their family members not coming. So because the United States was getting close to that 30,000 number, we actually had a lot of cancellations for August and September. So we had 70 individuals who were canceled for August and September. Many of them were rescheduled for October. So we had 30 people coming between October 8 and October 20, and they have all been canceled or in the process of being canceled. And so those families were expecting them in August or September. They got canceled. They were expecting them in October, and now they've been canceled again. And so they're very concerned for their family members. We have people with medical issues that are not being addressed. And as Stacey mentioned, people have gotten rid of all of their possessions. They're in the major cities now and away from the refugee camps where they have called home. They're confused. They don't know what's happening. I have had family member after family member just ask, like, please do something. Can you please bring my family here? And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. And our concern is that it may be a very long time before we get those family members here.
Yeah, I can't imagine how confusing and disheartening that is. So bringing it back to this 18,000 proposed number for next year, I wanted to ask Peter, help us understand who those 18,000 slots are for, because we know that it's been allocated a little differently than in previous years. So could you explain some of that for us, Peter?
Yeah, previous years, the presidential determination has been broken down by region. And this year, at least the memorandum we've received is a little different. It lists having 5,000 spots for refugees reserved for those who fall under a class of religious persecution, which for comparison's sake, 2016, that was over 28,000 who entered under that. There's also 4,000 reserved for Iraqis, 1,500 reserved for Central Americans, and doing the math, that leaves a remaining 7,500 for the rest of the world, the rest of the regions, and the rest of the other categories of persecution that may result in someone becoming a refugee.
Wow. And that's down from a few years ago. It was so many more than 75,000, right? I'm sorry, 7,500.
Yeah, well, again, it used to be broken down by region, and not more like Latin America, Asia, Africa. And yeah, again, we've gone from 2016, the total number being 110,000 to now this upcoming year, the proposed number is 18,000.
Yeah. Wow. So, Kristine, if after the president has the consultation with the congressional leaders that he's required to meet with to make the final determination, if 18,000 is the final number that they choose, what will be the impact on refugees waiting for resettlement?
So, Melissa, there are thousands of refugees that are ready to come to the United States. And it means that those refugees will wait and potentially wait for a long time until there is a greater presidential determination. And then even further than that, their clearances overseas will expire. And if there is not proactive action to continue those clearances, they may have to start that process all over again. So we are concerned for all refugees. We have people from many different people groups that they're desiring for their family members to come here. But we're particularly concerned about the Congolese and the Burmese. These are two very large people groups, groups that we have worked with a lot, and they would not fit into those other categories that Peter mentioned. They would fit under that 7,500. And so the numbers of those coming will be a very, very small number compared to the need. And so this really is dividing families. There are family members that are already here in the United States that want to welcome their family, that want to have them here. Refugees are in refugee camps, many of them that are unsafe, and they are not able to return to their home country. You know, just in the last couple weeks, over 36 villages in the Congo have been burned. It's not an option for them to go home. It's not an option for them to stay viably in those refugee camps. They desperately need an opportunity like refugee resettlement. And so what this number means is thousands more during the time of the greatest refugee crisis we've ever had, that refugees are waiting for a very, very long time. Refugee resettlement is a life-saving opportunity. And so denying that opportunity really, truly puts people's lives in danger.
If I can, just a story from our office. I had a mother come to our office this week. Their family, our office resettled. They spent 17 years in a refugee camp. They're from the Congo. During that time, the father died. So the mother and 5 children came over. There's one, because they were an adult child and married, they were a separate case, processed separately. They're still in the camp. And the mom came today asking if, or excuse me, not today, this week, asking if there's anything we could do because she's sick, she has malaria, very nervous about her health. And those type of situations, the heartbreak of these families is the direct result of low refugee numbers. And it's just an important reminder when we talk about numbers, what that means for real people is tragic consequences. They're not just numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's important to note too that a lot of these, when we're talking about them going on more holds and more time, a lot of them have already had their life put on hold for 20 some years, waiting in a refugee camp just for a safe place to call home, a safe place to raise their children, a safe place to be where they didn't have to live in fear. And so we're not just talking about extending that time period to get maybe a clearance of like a year. We're talking about that's going to make 21 and a half years. It's extending that time period even more, and it's already been so long of a time period to just wait to be able to have a safe place to raise your family. And isn't that something we all want? Like as Americans, we all want a safe place to raise our children, and doing what we're doing, the refugee resettlement program is denying people that ability to be able to have a safe place to raise their families and to call home.
Yeah, that is so difficult. And so not only are there these huge impacts on refugee families themselves, but Kristine, could you tell us a little bit about the impact on refugee resettlement agencies like yours, like Bethany, World Relief?
Yeah, I don't think we're completely certain of what impact this will have for us. We're definitely focused on the impacts that it's going to have for clients. But one of our greatest concerns is how this is a further dismantling of the refugee resettlement program. And it really weakens the infrastructure. There have been, over 100 refugee resettlement offices that have had to close just in the last couple years. And so will that mean more offices maybe need to close? I don't know about that. We are not personally concerned about that for Grand Rapids, but that is a concern nationwide. And just if the numbers at some point do increase, how long will it take to rebuild up the program? Because so much of the infrastructure is being impacted now.
Yeah, we feel the effects of it at every level, right? Yeah. Well, I wanted to take a moment too to talk about what we can do, what our communities, our faith communities, what we can be doing in response to in response to this news and this information. It's not too late for us to raise our voices and tell our elected officials that we want to protect the refugee resettlement program and keep it as strong as it's been in the past, so that it can be what we've always been committed as a country to it being. So as I mentioned before, the president cannot make a final determination on this number for 2020 until he consults with certain congressional leaders, so that being the leaders of the House and Senate Judiciary Committees and of their immigration subcommittees. So through the Office of Social Justice, we have an action alert going right now that encourages you to, or connects you to be able to make phone calls to those particular members of Congress to really ask them and urge them to advise the president to keep the program intact and to resettle 95,000 refugees for next year, which is in line with the historic norms of the program. So just wanted to make that plug to give people some hope that there is still something that we can do. And I also wanted to thank each one of you for your time and for your commitment to this cause. I'm sure it hasn't been easy, and just in terms of the workload and in terms of keeping up hope and stamina, but just want to acknowledge and thank you for what you do, and we hope you will be able to keep doing it for years to come.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.